Hello, hello, and welcome, beautiful badass, to episode number 18 of the Magic is in You podcast, the podcast designed to empower you to tune and tap and turn on the magic within inside of you, allowing you to bust through limiting beliefs so that you can take aligned, inspired action and actually create the life that lights you the fuck up from the inside out. My name is Kelsey Holmes. I am a life, mindset, and women's empowerment coach, empowering badass women to actually live, create, enjoy the life that they really truly desire, that lights them the fuck up from the inside out without limiting beliefs and self-doubt holding them back, helping them transform their mind, body, and emotions so that they can live this life on purpose with intention now. And oh my gosh, I have such an incredible podcast interview for you today. Today we are talking to Jen Faye, who is an incredible, beautifully empowered, talented watercolor artist. And I am so excited to share this podcast with you today because we talk all about creativity and how her journey of going from being very practical minded person to really embracing her creative side and expanding and growing into her art business, where she is opening her biggest solo show in just a couple of months. And oh my gosh, it's such a good podcast. We talk about how to move through resistance as resistance comes up, as you are going after creating and chasing and cultivating your dreams, how to create that creative energy, spark, aliveness within your work as a creative, as somebody who is passionate about cultivating and creating what they desire in their life. It is such a powerful episode, and I'm so excited. Jennifer Faye Colombo, it creates soul nourishing art through the magic of watercolors. Her work is intended to support and elevate the energy or a space and remind the viewer to take a pause and get present, with nature being her biggest inspiration. In addition, as a lover of all things personal development, Jen creates journals and card decks with her artwork to add beauty and elevate those transformational tools. And I know you're just absolutely going to love Jen. Make sure you connect with her, go stalk her Instagram, check out all of her artwork. It's so incredible. And I'm so excited to share this episode with you. And before we get diving in, I just want to let you know that the Embodied Empowerment Challenge has been flowing strong. It's been so fucking incredible. We are on day 6 today of the Embodied Empowerment Challenge. We are wrapping up the challenge tomorrow. It has been such a powerful challenge. We have created safety in our body. We have cultivated our inner creative fire. We have empowered ourselves. We have been diving in mind, body, and energy to elevate you from the inside out, essentially working through the chakra system from the root all the way to the crown. Today, we are tapping into the third eye. And if you want to tap into this magic with the Embodied Empowerment Challenge, you can even get day 1, the first day where we are creating safety in our body, for free. I will drop the link in the show notes below here for day 1 of the free for a free access to day 1 of the Embodied Empowerment Challenge. And if you want the whole challenge, the link will also be down there for that. And if you want more intensive VIP one-on-one transformational experience, there are currently a couple of spots available in my VIP one-on-one Elevate You transformational coaching experience, where we are diving in somatically, subconsciously, and through the conscious mind and energy. So if you are looking to elevate yourself from the inside out and you're ready to commit to yourself, to your growth, to your creativity, to your expansion, I encourage you to apply for Elevate You below. Without further ado, let's dive in and connect with this incredible, magical, creative Jennifer Faye. Oh, there we go. Welcome, Jennifer Faye. I am so excited you're here today. Thank you so much for joining me on the Magic is in You podcast.
Thank you. I am so excited to be here with you today and your audience and talk about magic.
Yes, absolutely. So, like I mentioned in the intro, Jen and I connected online on social media, and I saw her magic. I saw her light, her creativity, her expression, and was like, I am so excited to connect with this woman and interview you and hear all about your magic. So, Jennifer, could you tell us a little bit about yourself. Everybody already knows that you are a creative, a painter, but can you tell us like how you got into art, how you found your magic and created and cultivated your magic within your work that you do today?
Absolutely. And it's funny. I think this might be the first time I'm going to share this part of my story on your podcast. So
Ooh.
yeah, so it just feels like the right space. So I have been drawing and painting ever since I was child. It is sort of it has always been within me, and it is in my family line.
Mm.
Faye, which is actually my middle name, I am named after my grandmother, who I never met, who painted later on in her life, both self-taught and taking painting classes just for pure fun. And I inherited both that love and that gift that I am so grateful for. So I've always drawn and painted as a kid, had whatever I could get my hands on craft wise. Like I was in it, like those were my favorite toys to play with. And I was very, very fortunate that when I went to high school, art was really careful. Like it was honored. Like it wasn't
Mm.
just like this thing thrown aside. And I had really beautiful, amazing training. And my senior year of high school is where the magic really clicked for me. And absolutely fell in love with the watercolor medium. So we can go back into that, but I'll tell you a little bit more about my journey, how I got here. I at first did not want to go to art school. I'm also highly practical, and I was like, I don't really know what to do
Mm.
with this, and this is kind of my fun and my entertainment. So I kind of had a long path to like get back to where I was. Um, Went to school for something, changed my mind, wound up becoming a scenic designer, was in the entertainment business for over a decade before leaving to do something completely different, nothing in a creative field. And when I left, oh boy, talk about magic and the nudges and your intuition. It came knocking softly at first, and then louder and louder and louder until I finally said, okay, I hear your message. I receive your message, and I'm going to start painting again. So I started painting again for my own pure entertainment and joy. Later on, I wound up showing, even though I had never intended to, and then people started buying some stuff and people started commissioning me. Again, nothing of what I intended to do. I was really going back to a creative practice for my own pure pleasure, joy, entertainment, and happiness. It is my happy space, my zone of magic and genius. And then everything else unfolded, and I still have I took a practical spin and created card decks for other people and myself, as well as journals. And this year is the year I'm stepping really fully into claiming, no, I am an artist, and like this is what I'm doing, and really putting it to the front seat instead of it kind of being a sidekick.
Oh my gosh, I love this because it's not like an overnight thing most of the time. Sometimes people are like, okay, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life and it's going to be great. And that's amazing. But so oftentimes it's actually a journey that leads us to our true passion, our true calling. So I'm really curious. I love how it's always been a part of you. You've always tapped into this creativity. I got full body chills when you were talking about your grandmother and how your grandmother's energy and just creativity and excitement and inspiration for art came through you. I'm getting chills again thinking about it. I also really found it interesting that you were saying how well life took it and you took the practical road, right? Your logical
Mhm.
mind thinking, I should probably be practical, but then you said life kind of started gently knocking and then like more forcefully knocking. Can you describe a little bit of what that was? Because I feel like sometimes it's really hard to listen or hear the knocks of our life. And sometimes it's helpful to hear how it presented for other people. Can you tell us how art and creativity and like that need and desire to come back to art and painting? What was that?
Yeah, absolutely. So first I will add, when I was in college, I remember going back to visit my high school, and one of my
Mm.
teachers, who was actually my history teacher, said to me, he said, "Oh, I'm not surprised you changed majors." He's like, "You will always go circle back around to art." And I thought that was so fascinating, and that sort of stuck with me. And it turned out he was 100% correct, as many times as I tried to run away. Um,
And from a history teacher, that is so
yes.
amazing that even your history teacher, could see that you were an artist.
Yes, for sure. And it was very nurtured and fostered in the school that I went to, which I'm very, very grateful for. Um, but those nudges and knocks that you're asking me about, when I left the entertainment business to do something completely, completely different, having nothing to do with creativity, it started slowly. Just when I would go outside, walking my dogs, observing nature, I would be very drawn and pulled into the colors as the flowers were blooming in the spring, right? These deep, gorgeous colors were just calling my name. And I sort of started to hear these gentle whispers. I referred to it later on in a poem I wrote as a very annoying Jiminy Cricket voice. Um,
I love that. Oh my gosh, so much.
it was just like this soft whisper at first of like, pick up the brush, go back and paint, pick up the brush. And I had a resistance to it at first. And my intuition, my heart, my soul, like were just calling to me, and they were persistent. That Jiminy Cricket voice was persistent. It was, and then it got a little louder and a little louder, and I kept hearing the voice of like, you have to paint, you have to paint, go back to paint, go back to paint. And finally I was like, okay, okay, like, please just I will go take a class and I will pick up the paintbrush again. And I just, okay, I just, they got annoying, and I
Yeah,
finally listened, right?
absolutely. But first off, I love the Jiminy Cricket analogy. And like, it really does feel like that little nudge of that intuitive voice in your head of like, this is what you need. This is what you desire. This is what lights you the fuck up from the inside out. And how, even though you kind of tried to like maybe not necessarily totally listen to it, it persisted and got louder and louder and louder. And it can be something as gentle as a little Jiminy Cricket voice off to the side that's just gently nudging you towards something until it finally starts to potentially holler at you.
Yes. Well, and then it continued to get louder in a
Mm-hmm.
different way.
Oh, do
So,
tell.
yes. So when I finally said, okay, yes, I figured, you know what? I was in a creative business, but I wasn't watercoloring, right? So even though I was in a creative field when I was in the entertainment business, I didn't have my own watercolor practice anymore and stuff. So I was like, okay, I'm probably very rusty because it's been like kind of over a decade that I've played in this medium. Let me go take a beginner watercolor class at, the student, like adult continuing education
Mm-hmm.
that people usually find. So I signed up for this class, and I partly did it too because I just wanted to be in a community, and I wanted to be in a room full of other people who were either beginners or, like me, wanted to just be there for pure fun. So I went to the class, and I was the first one there, and I sat down at a table. And slowly people kept coming in, and no one sat with me. And the teacher came in, and we gathered around, and she starts giving the first lesson. Bear in mind, this is a beginner class.
Mm-hmm.
So we go back to our table to start working. And all of a sudden, I got hit in like the best way possible with this nudge of like, you're not doing the assignment. And I was like an A plus, like follow the rules sort of student. And it was this very deep knowing of like, you are not going to do this. You are about to go forge your own path.
What did that feel like in your body? Because I feel like sometimes people don't quite understand like what that knowing actually feels like.
It was a while ago, so it's a little hard to remember, but it
Yeah.
was just this very deep knowing. And it
Yes.
was like this very expansive feeling, but also this like I had already learned my lesson before when I tried to ignore. So when I got this like nudge, which was more like a shove of like this
Mm-hmm.
is what you're doing, I was like, okay, I'm gonna step into this. I'm gonna say yes to this. Yeah. And So I sat down at the table and I put on my earphones and put on my iPad and iPod, and I was listening to some like meditative music. And at that point, I had just started getting into a meditation practice and doing some energy work. And it was just this very strong, like, this is what you're doing. And I listened to the music and I threw out all of the rules and I just painted, like, from my heart, from my soul, playing with
Mhm.
colors, really with childlike wonder, getting
Oh,
back into the medium that I fell in love with and just allowing the music to guide me. And it was the biggest gift. And the best part was, by the way, I was by myself. Again, like I said, there was a reason why no one sat with me clearly. The universe had a plan in mind. And the teacher was so wonderful. She didn't care. She let me show up to class and do whatever I wanted and like create my own assignments. And she was actually the one that encouraged me to start showing. And eventually,
like,
like, everything unfolded and evolved, started unraveling.
she encouraged you to actually start like showing, as in like going to events and sharing your art. Is that
Yes.
right? Oh my
Yes.
gosh. I love that. And that beautiful knowing that you actually listen to, rather than listening to the old programming of where you're like, I'm just going to follow what I'm supposed to do. Instead, listening and actually allowing yourself to receive the messages from your intuition so that you could actually intuitively paint and create from your heart, from your soul, from your spirit, and connect with all the colors that you were so like deliciously excited about and vibrating with out in nature. And I love how you mentioned you allowed yourself to tap into that childlike wonder energy that allowed you to just like express and create from this place of free flowing energy. It sounds like, oh, I love
Yes.
that.
Eventually, like, when I felt ready in the nudge, I started like, oh, okay, I can dip my toe back in the water of painting realistically and stuff as well. But it took me some time, and that was my own journey and process of unraveling beliefs and stories
Mm-hmm.
and patterns and all of these things. I kind of took myself on my own adventure.
Yes.
And I said in the beginning I would return to this, but what happened in high school when I first learned how to watercolor and watercolor professionally, like with actual professional grade supplies, the first assignment we had was to copy like a existing piece from like a master, so you can kind of get the hang of the medium and like what it's doing without with having some sort of structure to rely on and use
Mm-hmm.
as reference. The second assignment we had, I'm pretty sure, was choose your own adventure, and I decided to paint an iris. And I remember putting the water down on the paper to start to create the background. And I very to this day I can still tune and tap right into that moment where the paint and the pigment flowed off the brush into the water, and it just floated and created this magic right before my eyes. And it was, a love affair ever since.
Oh, so that moment was in high school when you
Mhm.
really fell in love with watercolor specifically, and how the water and the paint interacted organically and naturally and flowing and beautifully. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
And it's continued our relationship, and I refer to it as a relationship, has continued and grown even more, especially as I've evolved as an artist. And I like to think of when I work in watercolors, I refer to it as a dance, and we are dance partners. And I am working in harmony with the medium. And sometimes I'm leading, sometimes it's leading. It's always a co creation. I'm also just working with the energy that's flowing through and like while I'm in that creative flow space. But it is my favorite medium to work in. And it is truly, to me, pure magic when I get to be in that space. And when I let go of the rules, and really just allow the energy, the medium, like what's unfolding before my eyes, to co-create whatever the final painting is going to be.
oh, I love that so much, especially because I'm not a watercolor artist at all. I will preference that, but especially because to me, watercolor artwork is that co-creation, right? You don't necessarily have full control over what the colors and the water is actually going to do on the paper or on the canvas. Is that correct?
Sometimes, yes, you have to have a lot of trust. There are ways to paint more controlled, and I do that. Like if I'm
Mm-hmm.
painting a pet portrait or something for somebody that has a lot more structure to it. Part of it just comes with experience and like learning how to trust and very intuitively putting colors together. um, and really trusting the paint and really trusting the process. And I think that's what's so fun. And with watercolors, especially certain collections that I work on, specifically my Ocean Vibey collection. I paint very, this is going to sound weird if somebody doesn't know what the terminology is, but I paint very wet, which I know sounds very odd, but
Oh, I love it.
there's different ways that you can like you use less or more water, and with certain
Mm-hmm.
things I use tons and tons and tons of water, and I'm really allowing the paint to flow in the water, and I really have to just go with the flow as it's doing its thing. I might change my mind and go, oh wait, I'm gonna grab this color. Or I might feel nudged to pick up my entire artboard and like move it around a little bit, or I may get called to grab something else. And that's really beautiful and magical. It really is a co-creation and letting go and just completely trusting the process. And honestly, the worst thing that happens is something might go in the trash. Like sometimes you experiment and it goes in the garbage, and that's okay. That's what happens. Like it's really trusting that um you are going to get somewhere at some point.
Oh my gosh, I love hearing about your creative process and how you do co create and allow the intuitive nudges to really lead your creation process, it sounds like, and creating in that state of flow state where you are like tapped in, fully present with what's happening between you, the canvas, the water, the colors, the brushes, and how you're allowing yourself to be fully present in those moments. So I am curious, as you have grown as an artist, allowed yourself to come back to art, and then eventually allowed yourself to lean in, not just as a hobby artist, but actually taking this on as your work and creating to be able to share with other people, to be able to sustain yourself and grow your business. Can you tell me a little bit about the journey of how, and maybe it started with that initial adult art class teacher, but how you got from creating for yourself to creating for your work? I know you're prepping for a big show in May right now, for example.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about that journey?
Yeah, so it's all a journey for sure.
Absolutely.
Um, and I have to say I do lean heavily on my background, not only as a fine artist, but my experience in the entertainment business. It's why I love co-creation and I love creating for other people, whether it's a commission or a product. And those things just sort of started to happen. Initially, it happened with my teacher who was like, you have to show, like, enter into these local shows. And I really didn't want to, like, because I had no idea about any of this. It was really never my intention of sharing my work originally. And with her encouragement, I submitted and I entered into a local show, my a watercolor, and I happened to get in the show, and I even won a ribbon off of my first show entry. And that sort of gave me confidence of like, oh, there's something here. And not that we're really supposed to lean on the external validation, but at that time, it was very helpful to me to see like, oh, there's something here beyond my own studio practice.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kept creating and I just kept starting to, I showed more in more local spaces. And I had a job. I was working, and I would hang some of my work in the space and people would inquire, and it just sort of started to happen quietly. Like people would ask me to do commissions and I would experiment with other things. And then over time, I really learned I wanted to take the reins myself and what other ways can I apply this. And a few years ago, I created my first card deck. I feel like I manifested that. I had gotten the nudge in a meditation one day. Wouldn't this be cool if you got to create a card deck? And I was like, I have no idea how to do that. Like, I have no idea how any of this happens. And then a friend of mine called me and said, "Hey, I have this idea. Would you be interested in illustrating this deck?" Anyway, so I did, and we co-created this really beautiful deck together. We actually turned down a publishing deal and decided to do it ourselves. This is before we knew things were going to go a little wonky in 2020.
Fair, fair.
But before that happened, we had run a Kickstarter to do the initial funding. And I found it to be so much fun creating our own decks. And because we chose to self-publish instead, I learned how to do all of the things and I relied on my original background. Because when we decided to turn it down, she said to me, like, you got this, right? Like, you can figure out all the printing thing and like all that stuff. Cause she's like, just do the writing part. And I was like, I got it. Like, I got us, like, we're good. And then I discovered, oh, wouldn't it be fun if I did this for other people? So part
Ooh.
of it was just learning along the way. And then eventually journals came into play too. And I still create those for other businesses, both for other businesses. And yeah, it's just been following all of those roads and those different like breadcrumbs that were given to me along the way until finally this year, I'm like, okay, cool. I'm going to go do this. And part of it is following my intuition, and part of it is acknowledging where maybe I don't have knowledge in an area, because why would I in some of these areas? And if I don't, I go find help. And then what I learned is I take what resonates with me and what feels good for me and aligned to me, and then I leave the rest behind.
Oh, I love that so much. And that is a practice of like being able to understand what feels good for you and allowing yourself to actually leave things behind. Because I know for me at least, I have been known to carry things or do things for way too long sometimes.
Mm.
And so being able to release what is not serving you so that you can create room and space for where you do want to grow and where you do want to go is such a powerful skill set. And so it sounds like this becoming a professional artist at least has been a
Mhm.
very natural organic evolution over your life. Is that right?
Yes, for sure, with a lot of resistance along the way.
I was just going to ask about that. I was going to ask because I know for me and for a lot of women who are listening to this podcast, oftentimes resistance comes up, whether it's that sneaky resistance of like, oh, I don't need to do this just yet, or if it's like the big resistance of like, oh, I cannot do this right now. How did you work through your resistance as you've been growing in the direction of your art, your creativity, your intuition, your magic?
Yeah, so this is such a good question. Part of it is I have been doing a lot of personal growth work for years, as well as energy work and meditation. And when that resistance comes up, I mean, it's so much easier now than this was like a few years ago, right?
Totally.
If you step into this work and you're like, oh my God, that's I feel like that's normal. Like in the beginning, you're kind of, at least I was lost, and it took me a while to grasp a lot of concepts. But I notice now my awareness is very heightened, and it's very easy for me to catch myself in resistance. And when it comes up, I'm able to look at it and go, okay, what's really going on here? And it's like, oh, my brain is sort of taking over, and it's going, but we're not safe. This is crazy. This is so not practical. We've only done like more practical things before, and like even the creative things were practical. So I recognize when that's happening, and I use a whole bunch of different tools, but I let my brain know, my body know, like we're safe, we're cool, like heart and soul's driving the bus right now, like we're good.
Oh
Um,
my gosh, I love that. Heart and soul is driving the bus right now.
yeah.
Bringing it back to safety, like having the awareness to understand that the resistance is alive and present, and then
Mhm.
intentionally bringing it back to your mind and your body is safe in this moment. And then I love the heart and soul driving the bus right now.
Yeah.
I
And
love that analogy.
And as I go to do more things, like you mentioned, I have a big show that I'm doing locally to me in a few months. I don't know when this is dropping, but um, it will be in May. So I'm preparing for that. I have a lot of paintings already. I'm continuing to paint, more pieces for the collection. 'Cause that's just what I want to do. And part of that's the fun part. But then there's other things that are included in that where I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go look and get some local PR. I'm gonna contact some people and see like who can come to the show outside. I'm gonna ask people to share for me, like please share that this show is happening. And that's part of the learning process for me. I got the creative part under control, but it's more of that other stuff that's newer to me and unfamiliar to me that I'm working through. And I know that there's times where some stuff's going to work out and some stuff's not. And that's again where a lot of mindset work comes in for me of like, okay, this is what we're doing. And, you know, we're going to try these things that feel good, and we just have to see what works out, just kind of like I would with a painting, right? I will do experiments first. I paint small, but I also paint very large, and you typically do not see oversized, quite large watercolor paintings.
No.
um there's very few watercolors who paint that large, and I will do experiments before I go large when I'm doing a new collection, because although I'm working very intuitively, I do also need to kind of get like the feel of like, okay, before I can scale it up. So I'm kind of,
Absolutely.
yeah, so I'm taking the same approach of my creative practice to the business aspect of
Oh,
like,
I love that because as an artist who is creating a business around their art, it's not just the art that we need to know, but it's actually there's so much more that goes into it, like the business, like the marketing and the networking and getting your name out there, getting the word out that you're even going to be at the show so that people are excited to look for your work, to look for you. My husband and I, we create metal artwork and we've done shows for a few years now, and it's been such a learning experience. Oh my goodness gracious. And we didn't even like consider ourselves artistic necessarily exactly until an opportunity arrived for us to do a show. And it's amazing how just jumping all in, you really learn so much. So, can you share a little bit? You mentioned a couple of the things about like connecting with local PR and marketing on social media and getting the word out, asking people to share about your show. Can you share a couple other things or like a couple other things that you found super valuable in actually growing your business as an artist?
mhm. So for me, some of that in the past has been networking and people
Yeah,
getting to just know who I am and really developing relationships and connections. That's really important. I think
totally.
for anything you do, developing those connections. I mean, just the other day, a friend of mine texted me and said, "Hey, I met an interior designer through the same person who does both of our hair, who's also sharing the word for me. And I showed her some of your work. She loves one of the new collections that you're working on. And she said, have her feel free to have her connect with me." And my friend immediately was like, she's doing a show in May. The date of the opening is TBD, but like, and so she spread the word for me. So I think that's the power of really creating genuine connections. And people see my journey along because I share a lot of it on social media, like me behind the scenes and working and everything. And this year I'm taking steps. Oh, this is another intuitive nudge thing that happened too. I had done this ocean vibes collection, and right now I'm working on a grounding birch tree collection. And all of a sudden I found writing starting to pour out of me, these poetic forms of writing to go with the collection. And at first this
Ooh.
came as a surprise to me because that's not my zone of genius, right? Like this was, I don't really consider myself to be a writer, certainly not a poet. And it took me a while to share it with some people, like privately at first, like, hey, can you look at this and all of this stuff? And so all of these poems started pouring out, and I will be sharing. I've shared a couple of them on social media, but I'll be sharing them at the show as well. And I think it's partly also just being willing to take a chance and to say yes when something happens. Now, again, I had resistance around this when it first started pouring out because I didn't consider myself a writer, certainly not a poet, but it was coming truly from my heart and soul. Like it wanted to be poured out onto the page. And I had people encourage me to share it. And I decided like, okay, clearly like this is part of me. This is part of these collections. It's going now beyond where I expected. I need to listen to this. And that goes back to that mindset work again too, right? They're all
Mhm.
interwoven, and this is the same that I will take into the business part of all of this too.
Yeah. And oh, I really enjoy hearing the evolution and also how you allowed your heart and soul to drive the bus, and you at least like wrote down the poetry initially, and then you had the nudge to share it with people, and then those people helped encourage you. And it's so interesting to me how you you had the label of not a writer,
Mhm.
and allowing yourself to create the safety in your body, rework your mindset, become aware of the label that you had given yourself, and then deciding whether that label was really serving you or not, to the point where now you are going to be incorporating your beautiful, incredible, powerful poetry into your show in May, and leaning into the uncomfortable
Mhm.
also, because oftentimes we have these intuitive nudges, but if we don't allow ourselves to actually listen to them and act on them and lean into these intuitive nudges, even if it feels scary, even if the resistance is there,
Yeah.
then we can never actually see what the possibility, what the bloom, what the expansion actually comes from that. I also wanted
Right.
to bring it back to, you were talking about how for growing your business specifically, the relationships that you've developed have been
Mhm.
so powerful. And I want to bring it back to the fact that not only have you cultivated these relationships with people to where they know you on a personal level, and those connections are what people get excited about, right? We connect through emotion, we connect through that shared human experience, but you also had the guts to share your artwork with those people. So you were building these relationships and sharing your artwork so that when they happen to be talking to their hairdresser who knows an interior designer, you're the first person that pops into their mind, just very naturally, fluidly. And it's not even like they're having to push anything. They're just like, oh my gosh, this is just an aligned fit and it's going to be awesome. I feel like, for example, for a lot of artists, they're not willing to share their work. They're not willing to share their story, even with friends and family, because it feels intimidating. They're scared of judgment. They have all of this resistance and the fears. And so I just want to highlight the fact that you have done the work to work through the resistance, to be able to share even with the people that you're networking with locally, so that the word can spread about your art and your
Mhm.
business and grow from there.
Yeah, and I see it as to I my tagline is soul nourishing art,
Ooh.
and all of my artwork is created with intention. Every single painting has an intention set before it is created. And I have my own like little ritual and stuff that I do before I get into actually painting a piece. And my work tends to be, well, not tends to be, it always is. Maybe it'll change later. I don't know. We'll see. But it leans more on the side of calm and grounding and joy. And the intention is to, whatever sort of branch it is to remind us to get into the present moment and to have an experience with the painting that is in front of the person. And it has the ability to shift the energy of a space. It has the ability to shift the energy of a room, and to support an intention, a frequency of whether it's calm or joy or whatever it is, because different collections have different things, or if it's commissioned. And I know that's impactful to people because I've experienced that. So, for example, if I'm going someplace that is going to be stressful, right? There are certain places we all have to go, appointments and things and stuff that doesn't necessarily spark joy and feels like
Totally.
tension filled, right? But if I walk into a space and I feel calm because of the colors that they have on the walls or artwork that is there or any of that stuff, it instantly makes me feel a little bit better, right?
Mhm.
So art has the power to do so many different things depending on what it is that you're looking at. And I see my role as being of service, to be able to lend calm when there's chaos, to be able to remind somebody to tap into joy when maybe they're down and something happened, right? We all go through the entire range of emotions because we're human. Or maybe it is to remind somebody, whew, it's been a hectic day. Like, let me just tune in for a moment and ground myself. And my artwork serves as a focal point to help bring somebody into that space. And I love that. And that's why I share. I feel like I'd be of disservice if I wasn't sharing.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And having the intention that you put into every single piece, that art, like you mentioned before, it carries the energy with it forever. Like that energetic vibration that you put into each and every piece, that is felt through the viewing of the art and allowing people to have the reset, allowing people to come back into it, even if they're not intentionally thinking about the specific intention that you put in there. They cannot help but feel that vibration and that energy emanating from your art piece that you've created. I love how beautifully inspired all of your work is, even hearing you talk about it and the intention that you put into it. Would you be willing to share a little bit of your intention setting rituals as you are going to create?
Yeah.
I know, for example, a lot of creatives and artists have I'll call it writer's block because that's the easiest idea that it's popping into my head, where they feel like blocked in their creativity. And I know I've had this, for example, with creating some of the pieces that I've worked on, because I'm like, oh, I've got to get it done. And then I've created a process now to where I'm allowing myself to essentially set my intention and tap into my inspiration before I go to sit down and create. But can you share your intention setting process when you go to create a new piece?
Absolutely. So for anybody, if you want to borrow this, please feel free, but also please feel free to tweak this to make it
Mm.
your own. This is something that just sort of came to me. And I don't always do it exactly the same way each time. So it kind of depends on what collection or what piece I'm working on. If I'm working on a commissioned piece, it might also be slightly different because I ask my client to set the intention. So, and then I add my own in too. But basically, the basic setup is I always usually have music on in the background, and I'll pick, usually it's frequency music or nature
Mhm.
music or something very calming, soothing, spa-like music playing in the background. So I'm setting the stage. I also make sure to have all of my art supplies out ahead of time, including maybe some things that I'll always throw extra colors on in case. And that's because when I'm in that flow, I do not want to be interrupted until I have to stop and like walk away because it's watercolor. So like it has to dry sometimes before I move on
Yeah.
to the next layer. It is a medium of patience, by the way. Anybody who wants to give it a try. And then what I would do is I do a little mini grounding meditation. And this can be whatever it is for you. Like this doesn't have to be this, but this is typically what I do. I just envision myself with roots deep, deep, deep connected down into the earth and like pulling the energy up from the earth. I usually do like a light up of all of the chakras. I will also connect from above and then kind of put a little bubble outside of me of that energy. And then I set my intention, and sometimes I choose to bring something into session. So the Ocean Vibes collection, there was always seashells and like rocks from the beach hanging around. Sometimes I might feel called to diffuse certain kinds of essential oils like in my diffuser. Kind of depends on what I'm working on. I might get called to put a crystal on the table. Like that feels good. And then what I do is I just take a few moments before and I set the intention that I would love to infuse into this piece. But I also set the intention that the viewer receives what they need because I feel like my job is to empower and not tell you what to see or what to experience. So we can go back to that. But essentially that is my ritual. And then I begin my whole painting jam and just allow things to start unfold. Sometimes I will talk to myself. I might repeat the intentions. I might be just like in co-creation. I'm kind of like, ooh, this is, I should probably film this one day. It's kind of hilarious when I'm like in my studio creating sometimes because something will like happen and I'm like, oh, this is so good. And then I'm like, oh, wait, I gotta like move the paint. And I'm talking to myself like in my studio. Just doing my thing. But essentially, that's my little ritual. It only takes a few minutes. It's not like this big thing. But that's what I do before I begin each painting.
I really appreciate you sharing that and how you can tweak it or sharing your ritual, but then also knowing that sometimes it looks different than other times. It doesn't have to be the same every single time. Allowing yourself that fluidity and also giving other people permission to create what works for them, right? Because we're all individual and unique, and we get to tap into our magic in a way that feels aligned and empowered for ourselves. I also really enjoyed that you set the stage before you set the intention.
Yeah.
I thought that that was really helpful to hear and helpful to like I'm going to add that in to my practices because I know, for example, like when I have my space organized, clean, exactly how I want it, I've organized my crystals and my plants on my desk, for example, like I feel more inspired, I feel more connected, more flowy to my own energy. So I really enjoy that you set that stage. You had mentioned coming back to something around empowerment. Now I'm not
Mhm.
remembering the exact bit, but I would love to hear
Yes.
more about it.
Yes. So I do wind up titling my pieces. It's more for organizational purposes, though
Mm-hmm.
people have full permission to change the title if they want to, which I've totally had happen before. And I
Oh.
consider that to be part of a co-creation. And here's why. I also sign all my work on the back.
Mm-hmm.
That's for a couple reasons. One, it's because some of my pieces can be oriented in multiple directions. So I like people to have that option, and signing
Mm-hmm.
it would like force it one
An
way.
orientation. Totally.
But what I really encourage people to do is before you read my influences and everything, to whether it's my work or somebody else's, have your own experience with the work because we all have a different lens that we perceive things through because of our experiences, because of um, our culture, because of all of the things, right?
Mm-hmm.
All of the things. Like we have a different lens of how we can perceive things. So I encourage people to have their own experience and get lost in the work. How does it make you feel? Does it evoke a memory? Does it remind you to pause for a minute? Are you being pulled in because of a certain color? Like what are you gravitating towards? Really have this experience for yourself. And anytime I go to a museum or anything like that, I never listen to the headphone things or anything like that. Like I like to just have my own experience in front of the work. And later on in life, as I started meditating and doing energy work and stuff, the works that I always loved, even as a child and as a teenager in my early 20s, the work shifted for me and my experience with the work changed as I evolved and grew. right? So it's not
Hmm.
always, this could be even true on like a weekly basis if you have something in your home, right? So I think my job is to not tell you what to see and feel, but to empower you to have your own experience. And if you choose to um, listen or read my intentions, that's amazing. Like that can just add to the experience. And what I discovered is a while ago, I had posted one of my images from my Ocean Vibes collection, and I didn't tell anybody what it was named. I didn't say what kind of collection it was from. And I asked people in a couple of private Facebook groups to have an experience with it. There's a few questions I gave, kind of like what I mentioned, like what kind of feelings does this bring up for you? Does it bring up a memory? And if you want to share, like I would love to hear your thoughts. And this was so cool because some people were like, "Oh, it kind of reminds me of the shoreline." And everybody had sort of the same experience in terms of feeling like calm and stuff like that. But the memory that it evoked for people was different. So some people thought of it as the ocean. Some people were like, "Oh, it's like when I was a kid and I would pour sand in the thing." How cool is that? So I would have taken that away from somebody if I didn't ask this question and ask them to like tune in. And other people had other really cool experiences with the work too. So even myself, I will go beyond like, here's my initial intention, but if I sit with it, oh, it's not the ocean today. It's like the raindrops on the windows. And, it's really like bringing in my goal is to bring in an experience for people.
Oh, I love that so much because that how how you describe that, empowering and allowing people to have their own experience with the art and allow them to really feel what you have created for their own experience, that allows them to tap into their childlike wonder and
Mm,
enchantment of life and bliss, which is how you've been creating from your childlike wonder. And when I just think it's so beautiful when you get to create your childlike wonder and they get to experience from their childlike wonder, like
yes.
the sand castle or pouring the sand just this way on the beach, and it brings them back into this moment of delight, bliss, joy, and it allows them to tap back into that energy, the energy that you've already infused into there subtly,
Mm,
but and not in the this is what you should feel way, but in the way that like
right.
it's been infused so deeply into the art that it's being felt so deeply through actual experiences that people have had in their life. I love that. And what a fun experiment to just share with people and ask them questions, and also notice that the theme of similarities, but then also how they all still experience it differently. Like they have a similar
Mhm.
feeling perhaps, but they have that feeling from a different experience and a different, yeah,
Yes.
experience,
And
I
I
suppose.
think that's what makes it really fun. And
Mm-hmm.
really they become part of the co-creation too. And someone owns a bunch of these little bubble paintings that I did. And she wrote me this beautiful, beautiful message. Some of it is on one of my posts. And she was just like, every time I walk by, it's like I hear little giggles. And like that didn't come from me. That didn't come from like my artist statement. And I was like, this is the best thing I could have ever read. I was like, thank you for sharing that with me and like allowing me to share it too to the general public. And that to me is part of the magic too. Like when people message me and share with me their experiences with my work, whatever form it's in, that's really cool to me. That's magic.
Yes.
That's getting to participate in this entire amazing thing. And sometimes people bring things forward to me that I never even thought of until they brought it forth. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. That's such a beautiful observation. And it just makes the whole thing more fun.
Oh my gosh. I hear giggles when I walk by your art. That is like I got full body chills again. That is so delightful and fun and
Yeah.
literally experiential. Like you can think about walking past something and almost like hearing a whisper of giggles in your ear and
Mhm.
feeling that. And I love how once you've created the art, it's not just done and out there, but people
Mhm.
continue to experience it. You continue to elevate your experience with it just by hearing people's reflection of it, even after this woman had had your art for a number, I don't know how long, but she had your art for some time, it sounded like, when she wrote this to
Yeah.
you, and how you can still experience it differently, like again and again and again. I feel like that's this beautiful, abundant, blissful, never ending magic that gets to come from what you have already created.
Mhm.
Oh,
Yeah, it's fun when other people add their perspectives, their experiences to my work. It just,
yes.
like you said, it's abundant and it will
Oh,
never get old. It's so much
no.
fun for me to hear.
Oh my gosh, it's so, so fun and so expansive and exciting too. So I am curious, what is like your next edge? Like, what are you excited to kind of, maybe feeling a little resistance right now, but you are feeling that intuitive nudge. You're feeling that intuitive knowing of like, this is the next exciting adventure that you get to embark on.
Well, my big solo show is taking a lot of my focus because I'm going to have like 20 something ginormous watercolors in the show. But that
Yay.
next edge would be, this is part of my edge, is that is reaching out and doing things that I've never done before, like looking to get PR and looking to reach out to more people and expand. I want to be on more podcasts. I want to appear in more ways. I want to just be able to share and like hopefully get people thinking about art in a very in a different way maybe than they've thought about it before. And that is both exciting to me and also a little scary because I'm like, I don't know how to do some of this and I have to figure it out.
Oh, I love that so much because I think that art, at least for me, I did not appreciate, I didn't understand art for a very long time. And being able to hear, for example, you talk about art and what it brings and how it transforms life experiences, emotions, the way we think and feel about existing here on this planet, essentially. Allows more connection with art, it allows a deeper connection with art. And I think that you sharing your delight and wonder and magic with people is going to make such a huge difference, not just for your art, but also for art across the globe, quite frankly. I'm so excited about that. That's super exciting. And congratulations about your new solo show. That's going to be
Thank you.
incredible. I'm excited to see pictures already about it. And I have another question. So, if you were able to give somebody advice who is like feeling those Jiminy Cricket nudges, but who hasn't quite had the guts to like full send stuff, what would you tell somebody to like pep them up, to
Mhm.
empower them to maybe act on those nudges?
I love this question. My advice would be to listen to them, understand if you can maybe why you're getting those nudges and to act upon them. And that doesn't mean necessarily making a ginormous leap, right? Like I took little stepping stones to get to where I am now and I'm continuing to take stepping stones. So a small action can have a very big effect and impact in your life. And then you take the next one and you take the next one. And the other part of this would be if you're coming up with tons of resistance, you heard us talking about mindset work and other things. So whatever it is for you, like whatever lane works for you, get the support you need in order to take those steps, which I've always done. And that may be, you know, I have business besties that I talk to that we work out like our problems, or I'm like, hey, give me your, can you, like, I can't, I'm having like tunnel vision on this. Like, can you give me the different perspective? I need the perspective shift and I can't figure it out on my own, right? Or it might be me going, I need to walk away for a little bit and I need to go breathe and I need to go meditate. So, whatever it is for you that's going to support you in taking those steps towards those nudges, I would encourage you to get to not only to take the steps and listen to those nudges, because otherwise they will probably get louder. So you
They
just
don't,
agree.
turns out they don't go away, right?
They do not go away. to get the support you need, like as you take those steps, so you do feel safe, or you recognize stuff, or you might have to go, oh, I'll uncover like another limiting belief, and I'm like, oh, I thought we worked through this. Okay, it's popping up in another way now. So but I have the tools and the support to help me like when those things come up.
Oh, that's so good. And like actually empowering yourself to get the support, knowing that resistance is part of it, right? It's not like
Yeah.
we're going for creating what we desire in our life, knowing that it's going to be all smooth sailing,
Mhm.
expecting that there's going to be resistance and obstacles and challenges along the way, and empowering yourself to get the support ahead of time, get it when you know
Yes.
that you need it, and also allowing yourself to create those connections with people who you can talk to, like you said, your business bestie that you can riff with, and like have that reflection and have somebody else who just has a different perspective than you on what you're actually creating and doing. That is so
Mhm.
powerful and so, I think, truly essential for growth because it's, if I always like to use garden analogies because I like to garden and I like plants, but it's kind of like putting fertilizer on your garden. Like your garden will grow if you don't, put fertilizer. If you just bare minimum water it, it'll grow, but it's going to grow so much fuller, quicker, more abundantly if you allow yourself to put the nutrients it needs in it. So getting the support that you need for it, like getting the help and the framework and the tools in your toolkit to be able to continue and grow from there.
Yeah. And one more thing I will add, depending on what it is that you're getting nudged to go do, right? So let's say, for example, you're getting nudged to paint, but you've never picked up a paintbrush in your life before. If you decide to take a class, or you're going to look at YouTube videos, or you just want to go play, which I encourage you to play either way, because that's one of the best ways we learn. Or if it's picking up a musical instrument or taking a dance class, you have to go in with a beginner's mindset. Like you're not going to be a pro right out the bat, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's just not realistic. So going in with that beginner mindset and realistic expectations of this is going to take time. Like if I wanted to learn how to play piano, I would need to know what all of the keys are first, and I would kind of need to know this, and I would need to know this, and I would need to know this, and I'm probably playing a kid's song, and then I'm playing something a little bit more advanced. Like you're going to move up. So you're not going to play Mozart off the first shot.
Ah, exactly though, right? And going in with a beginner's mindset, not only um, for the brand new things, but even things that you already know. Like you took a beginner watercolor class, even though you had
Mhm.
experience in watercolors,
Mhm.
and it's not that you followed the prompts exactly, but you probably still picked up little cues, little tips, little tricks, little things that you didn't know or that you weren't quite aware of. When you go in with a beginner's mindset, you literally set your brain to allow yourself to learn new things. And when you
Yes.
go in with that intention and that expectation that I'm going to learn, I'm going to expand, there is something here, there's a nugget here that I don't know yet. And I'm going to allow myself to be in this beginner's mindset so that I can expand most abundantly as possible during this experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a friend who is a dance teacher, and she would always say, it's never bad to go back to basics. Like even
Mm-hmm.
if you're advanced, right? So there, because like you just said, like there's always something you can learn. And even though I wasn't technically a beginner and it felt very natural for me to pick up the brush again, I 100% picked up tips and tricks and things that I didn't know before. And honestly, like I'm always still picking up tips and tricks, whether I get them from somebody else or I accidentally discover something while I'm working.
Totally. Absolutely. And you have a different perspective of things too. When you allow yourself to be in a beginner's mindset, you're actually curious about what you could learn. If you
Yes.
don't allow yourself to begin in a beginner's mindset, then you're like, oh, I know everything. And you're literally putting a block, an energetic block around yourself to not allow these new tips or tricks coming in. I've been teaching yoga for 8 years now and practicing for much longer than that. And I love teaching beginners still because, and beginner style-ish classes, really focused down in the anatomy and the mindset and the energetics about it, and like the slow, methodical, intentional movement. Because even though I have practitioners who have been practicing in my classes for years and years and years and years, and they know all of the things, they still experience it differently because of just this tiny little tweak, this tiny
Mhm.
little experience that's subtly different, because they allowed themselves to be present as this, like, in this beginner's mindset. It's so powerful. I love that advice, and just also want to hone in on how important and valuable that advice truly is, because it's really easy for us to want to go in thinking that we know more than uh thinking we know more, right? It's like from that place of ego. Oh, like I know things, right? Like I'm strong and solid and I know things. But when we can allow ourselves to, like, just gently release that like need to know things, so that we can allow ourselves to learn the tiny little tips, tiny little tricks, tiny little things here and there, that'll just gently shift or subtly shift how the painting turns out, or how the playing of the piano shifts, or how you shift just ever so subtly in your body, and it's a completely different experience on the mat. It's so powerful. It's so simple, but profoundly powerful coming into things with a beginner's mindset.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely.
I love this. Well, I want to be mindful of your time, Jen. Is there anything else that you would love to share with everybody here on the Magic is in You podcast about your journey, your experience, how you any other last little bits of wisdom or anything that you'd like to share?
I would encourage you to go have fun. And whatever you choose to do, like, can you make some time for fun? And know that um, it doesn't have to be perfect. I have my own creative practice, like outside of the work you see. That's me just doodling and having fun and moving emotions and all of these things. And whatever it is that you are doing now, or you're looking to start, can you go in with an open heart and open mind and that intention to just have fun and to play?
Oh, I love that so much. And the simplicity is there, but it's also so magical, because when you're allowing yourself to tap into the fun, to tap into the play, you're tapping into that childlike wonder energy, which creates true magic and bliss in this life. Oh,
Mhm.
thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you so much for being here today, Jen. Can you please share how people can connect with you, how they can get your work, how they can get your card decks, your journals, but also your work? Do you ship your paintings?
Yes, yes. Anything can be shipped. Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Beautiful.
Well, first, thank you so much for having me. This was such a fun and amazing conversation. And anyone that wants to connect with me, there's several ways that you can find me. I'm on my website at jencolombo.com. I know it's going to get dropped into the notes, so you don't have to worry
Totally.
about spelling it. You can connect with me on Instagram. I'm Jen Faye Art on Instagram. I share a lot over there, including my beach walks because I live near the ocean. And I share mindfulness stuff over there as well, in addition to my artwork. And I'm over on Facebook too. And all of that you can find on my website as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Jen. Like she said, we will have all of the links in the show notes for her website, for Jen's website, Instagram, and Facebook, so that you can connect with her, so that you can see her beautiful, incredible creations that she's been creating, and so that you can tap into her magic. Thank you again so much for being here today, Jen. I appreciate you so much. And I hope you all have a beautiful rest of your day. Go tap into your magic, have some fun, and create something beautiful in this life. Thank you.